Okay, so now, just with the parents, we thought one thing that might be quite good is just to hear from a young woman that is now working in industry, that did study engineering, to hear that perspective. But we've invited Catherine Hay, to come and speak. She graduated from Systems Design Engineering in 2010. And again, was very involved, like Amanda. She was actually the president of the Engineering Society for a couple of years and very, very involved as a student. And she's currently working at RIM as a user experience analyst. Mm-hmm. So she'll talk to you a little bit about that and her experience as an engineer. And after she's finished, what we're going to do is, again, something a little different this year. We're going to have a parent panel, so you can speak to some of the parents of some of our current engineering students. So Kat, welcome, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thanks. All right, hi everyone. So as Mary mentioned, my name is Kat Hay. I'm a systems design grad, and I'm working at RIM as a user experience analyst, and I'm also working towards my Master's of Applied Science, again in systems design part-time. And similar to Amanda, I've got a picture of me being purpled. So today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about why I chose engineering and how I think I got from where I was to where I am today. So why engineering? I really like math and science. I always enjoyed the calculus and the discrete classes that I took in high school. I liked chemistry. I was okay at physics. And I participated in a bunch of the math contests, and I really liked things like strategy games. I also liked to know how things worked. So I would frequently be taking things apart, whether it was my mom's ski lock because she couldn't remember the combination, or a singing candle on my sister's birthday cake that just would not stop singing. And finally, I wanted a challenge. I heard about the systems design program from a friend of mine at Shad Valley, which is a high school enrichment program you might have heard of. And I really liked the idea of systems thinking and the breadth of courses that I would have the chance to take. But I didn't know anything about the field that I'm in now. Then when I was in first year, I took a course on human systems. And it's all about how to design for environments where people are interacting with computers. So we had lectures on things like perception and attention, so a bit of psychology, decision making, stress and workload, so how to keep people from being overstressed but also not too bored, and things like biomechanics and ergonomics design. And one of the things that I found really interesting are that many of the accidents that we have today are blamed on human error, and they can actually be attributed to just poor design. And if we better understand the people that are working with these systems, we can design for them, we might be able to avoid these kind of accidents in the first place. Then after I took that course, I had a first-year co-op term working as a usability associate at RIM. So this was a research position where I was studying people using BlackBerries in a lab environment. But it was a little bit early in RIM's history of UX, so the focus was really more about testing after the product had already been built. And I wanted to have more of an impact rather than waiting until what I thought was a little bit too late. So I tried a bunch of different positions in my field. I worked as a product designer at a Kitchener company called Desire to Learn, and they make online learning software. I also did usability testing at a company called University Health Network, which is a group of 13 different hospitals in Toronto that all share one IT department. I worked as a product manager at Bell Canada, and then for my last co-op term, I came back to RIM on the user experience team. And by this point, they'd actually built up a UX organization, and it included both the design and the research. And I found it really exciting to work in high tech and some of the challenges that come with working on a really small screen. In third and fourth year, I also took a bunch of courses to help me specialize in this area. So things like user-centered design methods, cognitive ergonomics, advanced interface design, and I supplemented it with a bunch of extra stats courses. But I think a lot of my learning came outside the classroom. So developing skills like collaboration and problem solving, organization and leadership. In first year, I was chosen as a class rep, so that meant that I got to go and sit in department committees and see how and why they're making decisions, and then communicate that back to my class. I got to organize things like class parties. I also got involved with the Engineering Society, which is what you heard Amanda talk about earlier, and it's a lot like student council. And so in first year, I organized events like semi-formal, skydiving, a design competition, did things like women in engineering. And then by second and third year, I took on a vice president position, and that was overseeing all these kinds of events. And up in fourth year, I moved up to the position of president, and I got to sit on all kinds of different committees, so things like the Endowment Fund Board of Directors. I got to sit on the Examinations and Promotions Committee, so how we make decisions about whether students get to move on from one term to the next. And I got to attend lots of national and provincial student conferences. Then in 4th year, I took on a position of grad ball director, which is basically just like prom. So the picture that I've got of me on the bottom here is holding up the Engineering Society mascot, which is our 60-inch wrench. The picture at the top is Poets, which is the student lounge that Amanda mentioned before. This picture was one day when I was in 4th year, and we showed up, and there was grass everywhere. It was all up the stairs, it was all over the tables, all on the chairs, at the bar. And I thought it really emphasized our motto of, we work really hard here, but we also play hard. I thought some of you might have questions about what it's like to be a girl in engineering. You know, the class ratios can vary anywhere from some being 50-50 to others being just a handful of girls in a class of over 100. And I think that's a little bit different from high school and elementary schools that you'd be used to. And I think it's fair to say that it can be a little bit shocking at first, but there are tons of opportunities to network with other girls. We've got a really strong Women in Engineering program here, and they put on events like spa days and chick flick movie nights. And the girls in my class got together and we took fitness classes, so we did spinning and swimming, and that was our way of going and doing something on our own. I never felt treated differently, and I always felt that my opinion was really valued. So some of the pictures I've got up here really wanted to show that being in engineering and being girly are not mutually exclusive. The one on the bottom left, or bottom right here, is me at my Disney princess birthday party when I turned 23. And then I want to spend the last few minutes talking about the kind of work that I'm doing now, and some of the career opportunities that your daughters will have if they study engineering. So I mentioned before that I work at RIM as a user experience analyst. I spend my days talking to customers and trying to find ways to make the product better. And I do that through things like customer interviews and focus groups and surveys. And I work with a very multidisciplinary team. So we have people that have backgrounds in computer science and psychology. We've even got somebody from genetics. And we've got a group of 16, and I counted the other day, and 8 of them are women. The picture that I've got up here is from CanBuild, which was a fundraising event where we built structures out of canned food and donated it to the food bank. So the next few slides, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the kind of work that I do, mostly because it's a field that I knew nothing about until I started engineering. So if I was to ask what is user experience, a lot of the answers that I would get back, and especially if people were thinking about user research, are looking at it as being usability testing, which is really about making products that are usable, things that are discoverable, and accessible for everyone. But it also includes understanding hidden user needs to make products that are useful and valuable, and designing an experience that's actually fun to use, so making something desirable. My team is involved in projects from the start to the end, and a big part of our job is triaging information. So in-market data like customer service, organization feedback, and surveys, market research data, so what to build and who's going to buy it, and usage data. How are people using it, and what are the kinds of things that they're going to do? And so part of my job is trying to pick the right tools to get the information that we need at each phase in the development cycle. So if we were to look at the research phase, we're looking at things like market trends and benchmarks, trying to understand where are competitors right now, where are the gaps between where they are and where we are, but not just where they are right now, but where do we think they're going to be so that we can work towards that in a couple of years. In the requirements phase, we're looking at business requirements and brand requirements and technical restrictions, and we might be doing stakeholder interviews trying to understand user needs. In the concept phase, we're developing prototypes and wireframes, which is just a fancy word for basically sketches, and trying to find ways to communicate the concept. Then in the design phase, we're looking at design principles, prototyping. This is where we'd be putting designs in front of people and getting their feedback on it. And then in the last phase, the validation side, we're looking at things like usability testing, heuristic evaluation, which is really just rules of thumb, and instrumentation data, so automatically tracking what people are doing with their device. So I wanted to finish up with some opportunities, because there's way more than just the user experience field that I'm in, and I think Mary talked about this really well earlier today. But I put up some examples of what friends in my class are doing right now. So we've got people that are already entrepreneurs, we've got some friends that are CEOs of their own companies that are just starting to take off, project managers, software developers, business planning, and I've got a bunch of friends that have now decided to go back to school, and they're studying for med school, law school, studying neuroscience. So the key here is really that I think engineering opens a lot of doors, and that your degree can be very customizable through the options in 3rd and 4th year. So as you get experience with the courses you're taking and through your co-op terms, you can start to tune your own education to what interests you most. So that was it. So thanks very much for having me.
Does anybody have any questions for Kat?
How did you think your education helped you in your job, your final job?
Well, I think in 1st year it helped introduce me to the fact that this field even existed. I took some courses, so the human systems course that I took in 1st year was a mandatory one, which is what introduced me to it in the first place. But then I had co-op terms that let me see, go into the field and see if I actually enjoyed doing it. And then by the time I hit 3rd and 4th year, there were all kinds of options that I could pick up on. So the question was how I feel working with people that are coming from different fields and are not necessarily engineering. I think I end up being the point person for more technical questions, but it's a neat opportunity to get to see all kinds of different perspectives on an issue. I don't know the Carleton Industrial Engineering program particularly well. One thing that I found really appealing about the systems design program, even more so than some of the other engineering programs we have here, are that we give you design projects all the way through. So we talked about a big 4th year project, but I've had those kind of projects from 1st year, 2nd year, and 3rd year as well.
Yeah, I think that is one of the unique things about systems design. The other thing I really like about the program, and I studied sort of materials engineering, and when I came here, is it really does go across boundaries. So you learn, again, about integration on a systems level type thing, so looking mechanical, electrical, and things like that. And they do emphasize design, so you do have a strong design experience in every year of the program.
Yeah.
So. And to be honest, some of our best entrepreneurs, the Desire to Learn company, founded by a systems design engineer, graduated about 10 years ago. So some very, very successful people have gone through that program.
I think, yeah, thanks. I think the other thing that's appealing here are having co-op terms that are only 4 months, which means you get many of them, as opposed to some other schools that do the full year-long internship. Because here, if you want to go back to the same company, you can keep going back and build on that experience. But if you find out that what you started doing is really not what you're interested in, you're not stuck there for a whole year. You can come back and try something else. And because we have 6 terms, you have 6 chances to find out you don't like that field and restart. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I don't think so. We see a lot of work within engineering about building tools for the medical environment. And I think as people are doing that, some of them discover that they really do want to become doctors, and the problem-solving skills that they've learned here will serve them very well in that profession. And for med school, you're looking at least a couple years of an undergrad anyway, so it's not really that different as if you'd gone into another program.
In fact, when I went through, I had a couple of friends that they purposely did engineering and wanted to go to med school. They knew at the beginning, and to be honest, their application stood out because it is unusual to have an engineering background compared to the more traditional life sciences. And when you look at, again, the technology that's used in medicine today, the imaging, the interpretation of the images and stuff, even to do open heart surgery now, you're running a robot. You're not, remotely. So video game experience is actually quite good for like that. But, there's all these things. So again, the friends of mine that did go through said that medicine was easy compared to engineering. So at least from their perspective.
I took my maths and sciences that you need to take to apply here. I didn't do some of the more technical ones like drafting. I didn't take a programming course. But when I took my physics course, that term I think there were only like less than 10 of us, maybe 7 or 8, and there was me and one other girl. I think I focused on the material and how I could work with the other people that were there. I didn't find that their attitudes really restricted me.
Maybe I can answer that. So there are ways to transfer. However, again, the first year in science is quite different from the first year in engineering. So it would mean like you'd have to start back over in first year. There may be some courses, like we do have a physics and chemistry course in first year, so those you may get credit for. But it would be like starting over again. But there are ways to do that.
I don't know if it was you or a manager find that to be true.
Well, again, so in terms of, you've got to remember, so they're going from high school, so there's a number of big changes that are happening. A lot of it's around study skills, we find, and adapting to now, see, some students we find, they do their homework because their parents parents are watching them, you know, and like physically there. So when that is gone now, suddenly they need to find that self-discipline stuff. So it's a lot about sort of transitioning. We actually have done quite a bit of work on sort of looking at the first year program and providing sort of help to the students to help make that transition easier. In fact, my husband's in charge of that program. So I've seen him talk about, and again, it's about study skills, good note-taking, things like this. So sorry, what was your question?
I noticed she mentioned about
Oh, the IB, yeah. So the one comment I've heard, so we haven't sort of gone into looking at statistics that way, but the one comment I have heard about the IB program from students that have studied it, some of the young women I've talked to, is that the workload there is much higher than regular programs. So in terms of the study skills, she felt she didn't see that much of a jump in terms of going from the high school to that. She's gone through the IB program. Again, that's sort of one or two people, so I don't know if that's typical or not. So. But it's really about the study skills, the discipline, you know, things like that. So, and maybe Amanda, do you want to?
So I heard you're coming from engineering into marketing. What was the other program? Business. Yeah, I think you learn a lot of problem solving and analytics in engineering that's really beneficial to apply in these kind of situations. And you can learn a lot from people when you get into industry that have different backgrounds and have been trained a little differently to look at the problem.
Again, we see a lot of our engineers go on to do MBAs afterwards if they want to go into the business route and sort of management and things like that. So, but again, the training you get in terms of the quantitative analysis, the problem solving, you're not going to get that later on. So I, again, would sort of recommend doing the engineering as a foundational degree and then moving into the business because, you know, it'd be very difficult if you didn't have that to acquire that later on, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, and I haven't seen people go through engineering and regret it. It really is a great foundation, and you can add on to it whatever you'd like. It's not shutting any doors.
Sorry,
I have a daughter who takes tech courses, loves them, sciences and maths, doing very well. Her high school teachers, while she's in all academic, receiving 85s, 90s, they're suggesting that she look at college programs. She likes to actually do and move things and blow things up. It's not a good thing in our kitchen. That's a totally unfamiliar world to me. I came from UW, this is what I know. How do I, as a parent, help make sure my kid is probably looking at engineering in the right direction?
So one thing I found just from working with people that have the college degree versus the university one is at university we focus a little bit more on the theory behind it, which means especially today as technology is changing really rapidly, you can apply that theory to new technology. Whereas I've seen with college, it can be a little bit more focused on that particular application, which might make it harder to apply as it evolves. We also do, though, we have a lot of labs with our courses, so there are tons of opportunities for hands-on experience and actually building things like circuits. And I don't think that you're giving that up to go into engineering at a university level.
So I can convince her she can still blow things up here, too.
Totally. And every 4 months at co-op.
Maybe one more question, then we'll start the parent panel. So. In terms, okay, maybe I'll speak to that. In terms of the retention rates, we actually find that we have higher retention rates for the women than the men. You know, for a range of reasons. So, so we don't see sort of bigger drop-off rates after first year of them or anything. So again, one thing as parents I'd like to encourage you is your daughters tend to be underconfident in their abilities. So again, like I said, if the average is 80 and they've got an 85, they're going to be very hesitant to apply. They're going to think they're going to need to be 95 to be able to be successful. So it's important that you support and encourage them. And you know, it's like Amanda said, you feel when you're in there, and I've talked to first-year engineers too, that they're the only ones that don't understand. You know, and again, the boys at that age will seem to be very overconfident, like, oh, this is a piece of cake or something like that. So again, in first year and in later high school, it's very important that you encourage them and support them that they can do it and stuff. And it's just, we see this across the board. So a lot of them will say, I don't want to do engineering because they don't feel they're smart enough to do it. And again, we see the opposite, so just be careful of that. And I don't know if you felt that way, but I know I felt that way. Like, for example, I got into Waterloo, I got into McGill, I sort of thought, I'll never make it through Waterloo. I mean, I grew up in Montreal, so there was other things, but I sort of thought Waterloo's going to be super hard and stuff like that. So I felt that way myself. So. And it's only later on in third and fourth year where you realize now that you're comparable to them. So
academically,
confident enough to go into engineering?
Well, it's, again, we see even on like tests and things like that, the girls will do better than the boys. Their scores will be better, but they still feel like they sort of fooled everybody. Like, or it was a mistake, or, you know, it was just a lucky day. So I don't know, it's just constant support and encouragement and things like that. So.
But basically the entrance requirements academically would be around, let's say, 80 to 85%?
It depends on the program, and it depends on sort of that year who's applying and things like that. So, and there's actually be somebody from recruitment here, so they can speak more directly to what some of those values are. Yeah, up and after in the break, there'll be somebody from recruitment here. So maybe one last question, and then we'll start the parent panel. And
just expanding on that one there, is there a preference or a quota that you try to fill from girls, or is it a total leveling field on the entrance? Like, you know, because in order to promote girls in,
yeah.
do you kind of...
No, yeah, we don't do any of that. We just really look at the academic scores and then the sort of information sheet and things like that. So we don't sort of have any type of, you know, where we will take in more girls type thing. So, and I don't think that would be fair to the boys either that have studied hard. So we don't do anything like that. So.
And is your application process automatic through a data system, or is each application actually looked at by a human?
Oh, no, it's all looked at by, well, humans, like us. Because we all read those, well, I don't personally read them all, I read some of them, but those information forms. So they are looked at it sort of holistically that way. Now, again, if you've got sort of, you know, a 60% and under, we're not going to look through all those because we get, you know, huge numbers of applications. But when you're getting, you know, when you're getting closer to what the averages are and some sort of gray area around that, then we're going to be looking at all those applications.
So it kind of uses the academic, and then you kind of have some limits around that.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. Because again, if it's 60%, they're not going to get in. I mean, unless there's a very, very exceptional case, so that we sort of flag type thing. So, but it's unusual for something like that. And it's mainly, they may not be successful here. We don't want to bring in students and then devastate them, you know, like, so it's about making sure they're successful as well and they're in the right program and stuff, so.
IB and AP helps to come in, or there is no?
Well, again, I think it helps in first year in terms of having seen some of the material before. The IB program, from what I've heard, the workload is quite a bit higher than the regular Ontario curriculum. So in that sense, it prepares the student in terms of the work-study skills necessary. But again, as Amanda said, by second year, the first year is really a leveling field, and because people have such different backgrounds, really the 1A program is, the first term is really a review. 1B, we sort of make sure that everybody's got the right math and things like that. 1B really starts the newer material. So the first year is really sort of the leveling field to make sure everybody's had the same background and stuff.
Do they get differential for admission criteria?
In terms of like the IB, no, we don't. Again, we don't do anything like that, so we don't look at that. But again, just in terms of their success later on, their comfort with the transition, let's say, it seems to be, from people I've talked to, the workload wasn't as big a jump from the IB program and stuff. So. Okay, so we'll end it there, I think, so we can do the parent panel. But thank you again, Kat, that was wonderful. So.